Hi, I'm Dr. Lauren Willoughby. I'm a plastic surgeon. This is one of my breasties, Dr. Christine Nicholas, who's also a plastic surgeon. We're going to be looking at some photos of Michael Jackson throughout the years, and we'll just kind of have a look at what we think he's maybe had done. And there's been a lot.
Looks like it.
Okay, so we're going to start with this first photo, 1975. He used to be really good looking.
So I think this actually looks pretty good. I mean, obviously he's done work to his nose.
This is probably his baseline.
It looks very natural.
And we compared to 1979. So the thing that strikes me the most is his nose is much narrower. So the nasal dorsum and also the alar bases have been narrowed.
I think he should have stopped here.
I know, I agree. He was good looking. Okay, 1980. So that's one year later. So more has happened. His
jaw is very well defined, but fillers didn't exist. So
yeah, his nose looks about the same. See, this does show, this can show you how the angle of the photo can change how the assessment of the nose looks. Because in 1979, it looks more narrow compared to 1980, but you would never widen the base of your nose. So that's probably just suggests it's just the camera angle.
What do you think about his jaw, though? Look at his jaw. He's definitely got a more well-defined jaw than he did back in 1979. I mean, it could be weight loss. Certainly that could have been what happened. Plus, he got older.
I think some of it could be camera angle as well, but you're not wrong. Yeah. His cheekbones look good, and the base of his chin looks nice.
You can see that he clearly had another rhinoplasty or work done on his nose.
Between 1980 and 1983. Yeah, the tip of his nose is actually starting to look a little bit deformed. It looks quite bulbous, and looks like there's some collapse at the base of the ala, which is the nostril up here. So when things go wrong, when you operate on a nose over and over and over, you really destroy the soft tissue support of the nasal tip. So I think that's what has started to happen to him between those 2 years. But his brows look the same. His mouth looks the same. Okay. Oh
my God, he's got his nose done again. You can see.
Why didn't he just stop?
Why didn't he stop? But it's funny because he had his nose done, but he looks like he's had permanent makeup put on in terms of his eyeliner. You know, he looks like
between
something's
84 and
changed with
86.
his eyes.
Yeah.
And his brows.
His brows, he probably had some tattooing there too. Which is not a bad thing. I have it done too.
I know, but I think it was a little heavy-handed there. It's interesting because he seems to have lost some of his facial hair too. I don't know if it's just due to the picture, but also you can see his skin color has completely changed.
Yes, yeah.
From, what was that year, if you scroll down there? From 1984 to 86, completely.
You're right, because I think that degree of color change is probably more than just lighting makeup. I mean, makeup can play a really, really big role. Obviously, if it was makeup, they were very vigilant because they also did his neck, because you could see his neck there. But his nose is starting to collapse. Like you could see that the tip of the nose is really starting to develop a very abnormal shape, looking very bulbous and very abnormal. And I think a lot of people notice that when you look at Michael Jackson. That's sort of the thing that like strikes you, is because his nose looks really funny. So let's keep scrolling down. So 86 is.
I hope he didn't do his nose again. Oh my goodness, he did. This looks even worse. I think the problem is he's really tried to make the dorsum, or the top of his nose, more defined, and he seems to be very focused on the tip of his nose, which has made his nose narrower and narrower, which doesn't fit his face at all.
And it looks very abnormal because he's lost all of the normal projection of the tip of the nose. And if you don't get that right, the nose just looks really wrong. Because normally there's more projection. There should be more projection of the nasal tip compared to the base of the nose here. And it looks like here the tip is almost retracted upward. It's almost like a study of what you should not do.
What you don't want to do.
With a rhinoplasty.
And it's too bad because the first one he had, I think, actually looked good. Very good.
Looked good. Now, and you can see too, he's had an open rhinoplasty because he's got the scarring at the base of the columella, which is the name of the little piece of tissue that struts between the two nostrils. But yeah, it's starting to look very abnormal. And I agree with you about the permanent makeup because that has not changed from photo to photo.
Oh, that's interesting. You know what
92.
We didn't comment on is look at his chin. It's started to become very prominent, and he's suddenly developed a cleft in his chin.
Oh yeah, let's see.
Which I don't know how.
Oh, yeah, between 85 and 88.
I don't know how you would do that without plastic surgery. I don't know why you would want to do that.
Well, I think anyone who's sought this large number of cosmetic procedures, there's an element of body dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder, because it's not normal for people to hyperfixate on a feature so much that they would seek surgery again and again and again and again.
Do you know, it's interesting because I know that there was a little bit of a craze of buccal fat removal now, you know, in the last several years, but you look at this picture and it almost looks like he's done it then. You see how sculpted his cheekbones are and how hollow he is underneath his cheekbones as compared to before?
You're right.
Almost looks like he has a chin implant in the picture from 1989.
I think you're right. I think he very well could have. And again, his nose just continues to strike me very abnormal looking. The projection is just not natural. The transition between the dorsum, which is the top part of the nose, and the tip is not natural. There should be a little curve between the two. So that's unfortunate.
Oh,
well, these
and
are
now
just going back in time.
His nose has gotten really bad, though.
So that photo in 1994, like probably what's happened, the soft tissue of his nose is just collapsing. He probably wouldn't even be able to breathe well through those nostrils.
I bet you he can't. And you've got, his tip is now completely rotated upwards. And I know that people aspire to have some rotation to the tip, but this would be exactly what you wouldn't want, I would say, especially in a male nose.
I was just going to say, because a little bit of tip rotation in women is actually considered aesthetically attractive. And men, that angle is more flat compared to the horizontal. So that's why his nose kind of looks a bit feminine. Not that there aren't variations in nature that exist between men and women that can be attractive in both categories, but it's just he's had some sort of a strut, some sort of a nasal support, because his nose is probably collapsing. So generally you support a nose kind of you need to support the sides of the nose and the dorsum of the nose. There's some sort of a graft there, and the transition between them is very, very sharp. So it looks quite unnatural.
He probably has a lot of scar tissue, which has led to soft tissue retraction. You can see his grafts, which is obviously not what we want. We don't want to see grafts when you're having a rhinoplasty. So this is everything that you don't want to see when you have your nose done.
And if he had just stopped a few years before,
should just stopped at time one.
Yeah, 92 to 95 we're seeing now too,
almost
frontal view.
Like he's become comical in appearance, which is really unfortunate because even the makeup is exaggerated. You look at his permanent makeup. Before it was on the lateral or the outside of his eyelids, and now he's got his eyes completely circled with makeup. He's got this really dark red lip, which in my opinion doesn't really look good. And now this nose is completely straight. Like it looks like a ruler. Okay, so this does not, and you know, even his cheeks.
There's no laterals, there's no fullness, there's no shape to the side. It's just like a sharp nasal dorsum and a strut that's probably not actually holding his airways open.
To be fair to his plastic surgeons, I don't think there's a lot you could do with this at this point.
The only thing you could do is not operate in the first place.
I was going to say, the only thing you could do is stop.
Yeah. At some point, you just have to cut your ties, say, I can't help you, or it's not going to look good, and I recommend we stop. Now, could he have had a complication we don't know about? Maybe he had an infection and had some complication with the graft that he had, and that caused the scarring and soft tissue retraction, volume loss. Maybe. But in those cases, you also need to think extra, extra hard before you would proceed again.
Revision and nose surgery is really not something to go into lightly.
It's very hard. Now just look at his cheeks here between 92 and 95.
Look at his cheeks. They definitely look like there's implants in his cheeks.
Implants or like one of those permanent fillers that went wrong.
Yeah,
some of those permanent fillers really soak up water and they look really unnatural and they get really, really rock hard. So I wonder if you look at his right cheek, so on the left side of the picture, on the one in 1995, some sort of a shape of the shape there is not natural overall. So now we're going down to overall face 1996
So it's interesting because his eye shape seems to have changed. If you look at his eye shape, they become more almond in shape. And I don't know, like, you know, I know people have talked about in the last 10 years or so, like the Facelift type of work they can do to the eyes to pull them out towards the outside of your face. But I don't know. It looks like he's had something done to his eyes, in my opinion. They just don't look normal. His cheeks, once again, look even more defined. Same thing with his chin.
Strangely pronounced.
Yeah, very pronounced.
The only thing is if he had a lateral canthoplasty, Like he actually has more scleral show on the bottom when he's younger. Like if you go all the way back up to when he was super young, and he loses that over time.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is the white of the eye below the iris. So if you can see that, you call that scleral show. And sometimes it's genetic, but usually as we age and the lower lid gets more lax, that distance increases. But in him, it's actually gone the other way. So I think I agree with you.
We also start to wonder whether he's starting to have facelifts. To be very honest, his skin is so tight. I'm sure this started before 2000, but there is, even looking between 1996 and 2000, his cheek has become quite tight. The eyes could be manifested through the facelift. That could be why they're tighter, but I would imagine that he has had a facelift at some point.
I think you're right. Okay, we're going down now here to the nose again, 1996 to 2001.
Oh, it's become even worse. He's lost any sort of tissue around the nose, and the nostrils have become retracted.
Yeah.
It's funny because you think, well, how could you make this worse? But every single procedure he has seems to worsen his overall look.
I think it's one of these things where you sometimes see it in people who get a lot of Botox and fillers, like too much. Sometimes you lose the forest for the trees. Like what I mean by that, you look at this picture of Michael Jackson in 2001. If you just looked at his eyes and his brow, you might say that's an aesthetically pleasing looking brow. I would argue maybe more in a woman rather than a man. And we're just talking in broad categories here. I mean, it's not like certain features strictly are male or female, but in general, for a lot of facial aesthetic surgery, since more women tend to have facial surgery than men, not to say there's anything wrong with men having it done either, or that we don't do it to men, because we do, but a lot of the typical proportions about how you describe how a brow should sit in relation to the frontal bone and in relation to the eye are described in terms of female aesthetic ideals. So if you look at his eye and his brow, you could say technically that those proportions look good, but when you put it together with the nose that it has retracted and looks very abnormal, lip shape not looking normal, probably facelift, like the whole picture just looks very unnatural. And again, you see this in people who get a ton of filler, because they might just look at their cheeks and they're analyzing their cheeks in all the views of the mirror. And sure, the cheeks look okay, but when you put the whole thing together and the cheeks look younger than the rest of the face, then it doesn't look natural. So
I think he's just lost sight of everything too. You know, the more you do, the more you end up doing, because you just don't see how unnatural you truly look. And, you know, and the problem is if, you know, if you have the ability to continue to have plastic surgery, you probably will continue to do it unless someone tells you not to do it.
You find someone who will do it for you. Yeah. So that's unfortunate. It makes me sad because again, it strikes me as it's body dysmorphic disorder for him, in my opinion. Okay, now we're looking at 2003 to 2005 nose profile. So
he's gotten something to improve his nose, it seems, between 2003 and 2005, because he's got more soft tissue. So I'm not sure what they've done, whether they've
lipofill fat graft.
It almost looks like that, and maybe better support at the tip. It definitely looks, because you can see he's got a little bit of an upturn to the tip now.
You're right, more definition here.
That he didn't have. So
the alar crease.
I'm actually surprised. This is the first time that I think he looks better. So, I mean, that was worth it probably for him.
Okay, now we're looking at the overall face. I know it's this one that stands out, the one at the bottom left. So, I mean, you know what? It's really unfortunate, because some of these pictures are truly alarming, and they really show you what you don't want to achieve with plastic surgery. Like, this was a very good-looking guy. I mean, did he even need a rhinoplasty in the first place? Maybe not, but certainly it looks quite good. You know, when he goes from the first picture to the second picture, it's just after that, he just starts to look worse and worse and worse. And unfortunate, he now looks like a cartoon character by the end of this picture. And he's almost lost a little bit of his humanity in that picture, to be very honest. So, yeah. And it's always the sum of all the gestalt, the picture of all the pieces together when they don't fit. Eyes look younger than nose looks funny, mouth looks different age than eye. The face looks non-harmonious. So that's Michael Jackson. Who's this now?
I don't think this is Michael Jackson.
Next watch Khloe Kardashian's
entire body transform.
So thanks for watching, guys. That was us looking at Michael Jackson's face. Let us know what you think he's had done. And if there's anyone else that you'd be interested in us reviewing, just let us know.